Hello and welcome to another analysis behind the news, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. Today we have one action item for you, so please stay tuned. Just announced, Philadelphia Mayor has announced that the city is terminating its contract to share arrest data with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency amid continuing protests, demonstrations, and occupations that have been ongoing since mid-July. The Philadelphia Inquirer reported that ICE was told of the PAR's cancellation on Thursday in an emailed letter from City Solicitor Marshall Pratt. The contract expires August 31st. He wrote that the decision was consistent with the administration's welcoming city policies, which reflect the principle that our city is safer, healthier, and more inviting when residents need not be in fear of their immigration status. So, in other words, a sanctuary city, right? Even though they would fervently disagree. But the fact of the matter is that Philadelphia, according to another article, which is from Foreign Policy magazine, was one of the cities that was petitioning for formal inclusion in a UN Global Compact on migration just days after the White House withdrew from the accord. Now, this occurred last winter. They continue, numerous cities, including Philadelphia, sent a letter to the UN High Commissioner on Refugees asking for cities to formally be included in the process as a global compact on refugees is being discussed. The move comes after the United States announced on Sunday that it was withdrawing from the UN's Declaration for Refugees and Migrants. The declaration, adopted by the UN General Assembly in September 2016, agreed to uphold universal human rights for immigrants, fight xenophobia, and bolster global governance by creating a global compact on migration by 2018, among other commitments. The United States under Barack Obama agreed to participate in the declaration. But the Trump administration, as it writes in here, continues on, shuns multilateral commitments and argues that the global compact infringes on U.S. sovereignty. Well, yes, exactly right. They continue, we simply cannot in good faith support a process that could undermine the sovereign right of the United States to enforce our immigration laws and secure our borders. This comes from Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, then Secretary of State, in a December 3rd press release. The United States supports international cooperation on migration issues, but it is the primary responsibility of sovereign states to help ensure that migration is safe, orderly, and legal. And doesn't that make sense? If you are to have a sovereign country, then it is beholden to limitations and responsibilities placed on it by its founders, its electorate, its jurisprudence, and definitely not from any global governing body, nor from those that want to remake the country according to a politically correct global agenda. Now, as we documented in our 1965 documentary called Anarchy USA, an organizing tactic of communists is to provide street-level pressure that create a problem that governing bodies are only too happy to solve, with additional government, of course, which can be at the local, state, or even the federal level. This tactic creates pressure from above and pressure from below to act upon a problem that usually originates from government. So who are these folks in Philadelphia? If you look at the signs and slogans that the protesters were using, you would come across the Philly Socialists, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Green Party of Philadelphia, the American Indian Movement, the Industrial Workers of the World, and the Workers' World Party. Some of their slogans included Sin Fronteras, which means without borders in Spanish, full rights for all immigrants, abolish ICE, open all borders, and, oddly enough, reparations for Puerto Rico. Not to mention that the Guatemala flag and the red socialist flag were also seen, including a number of Che Guevara signs. Now, an interesting note is that many of these were also seen at another recent event that was held after a gay pride parade protest when a man masquerading as a woman was arrested after he tried to burn a Blue Lives Matter flag. Now, what they may not have picked up on in history is that Che Guevara not only sent homosexuals to re-education camps, but that he personally enjoyed killing homosexuals. But back to the protesters. They are claiming victory and are now moving on to getting rid of the family detention center in Philadelphia, as well as demanding that ICE be dismantled overall. Now, in April of this year, the New American magazine wrote an article called "Stop Funding the Revolution." It was written by William Jasper. This article exposed the Achilles heel of those types of, or I should say of these types of organizations that work at destroying the moral fabric of our country, as well as the American system of government. He wrote, "It can appear overwhelming at times, as if mass insanity is spreading like an unstoppable plague everywhere. However, rather than succumbing to despair, it is important to realize that all of these militant movements are really hollow facades. They masquerade under the rubric of grassroots organizing, but are completely synthetic astroturf. Without the vast network of professional agitators supported by enormous infusions of cash from tax-exempt foundations, all of these phony movements would utterly collapse. They are extremely vulnerable. There are thousands of these radical organizations at the local, state, regional, national, and international levels that comprise a huge revolutionary network. They are demolishing our civilization piece by piece. The globalists who have been funding this chaos for most of the past century are simultaneously building their new world order on the rubble their agents have caused. President Trump and Congress must cut off the tax-exempt funding that keeps the revolution going. The president can begin by having the Department of Justice and the IRS investigate and prosecute foundation officials for their most obvious illegal, subversive funding activities. The financing of this massive enemy fifth column will not cease unless and until some of these malefactors start going to jail and the big foundations start losing their tax-exempt status. Now, Mr. Jasper is also coming out with a cover story in the next issue of the New American magazine that explains how immigration and migration are tools of those building the New World Order to change the demographics in countries so that electorates are changed and a globalist agenda will be adopted. One that dissolves borders and throws out founding principles, independence, sovereignty, and individual God-given rights. So our action items for this episode is to please subscribe to the New American magazine in order to stay on top of this threat, as well as many others that are a threat to our way of life. A digital subscription is only $12.95 for 24 issues. So please just go to thenewamerican.com, and while you're there, sign up for the free top daily headlines as well. Links are in the video description. And so please like and share this video and subscribe to our social media channels and news alerts. And until next time, we'll see you then.